Welcome to Wartime Shadows, where history meets the unknown. But today, we're about to take you somewhere even darker than the battlefield itself. In the heart of Italy, where one of World War II's bloodiest battles took place, lies a battlefield so haunted, the souls of the fallen are said to still roam its ruins. Monte Cassino, a place where victory was overshadowed by destruction, and where ancient secrets were buried under stone and ash. But what if some of those secrets were never meant to be unearthed? What if the abbey's crumbling walls guard more than just the ghosts of war? Join us as we explore the eerie tales of Monte Cassino's curse, a story of restless spirits, cursed relics, and a battle that never truly ended. You'll want to stay with us until the very end, because some stories don't just haunt the past, they come to life again in ways you'll never expect. The Bloodied Abbey. The winds that blow across the mountains of central Italy still whisper the name of Monte Cassino, a name carved into history with fire, steel, and blood. But beyond the strategy and sacrifice, there lies a darker tale, one that no military report ever dared to record. In early 1944, as Allied forces fought to break through the German Gustav Line, Monte Cassino became the focal point of a brutal, drawn-out battle. The ancient Benedictine monastery that crowned the mountain stood as both a symbol and a stronghold, its towering stone walls watching silently as tanks rolled into the valley below. Though the abbey had been neutral, its strategic location turned it into a military target. On February 15th, the sky opened in fury. Over 1,400 tons of bombs rained down on the monastery, turning 1,400 years of history into rubble in less than 3 hours. What remained was a smoking skeleton of stone, buried under dust and silence. But some said that the silence didn't last long. The monks who once prayed here had long since fled, but something else remained. Survivors from nearby units reported a strange stillness that followed the bombing, a suffocating heaviness in the air. Soldiers claimed their radios picked up static that sounded like chanting. Some heard whispering in Latin through broken headsets. Others said they felt watched, even in complete solitude. Among the ruins, scattered bodies lay half-buried in ash and debris. Germans, Italians, and even civilians who had sought shelter in the monastery cellars. But perhaps more haunting than the dead were those that never left. Rumors spread among Allied troops of a presence that moved through the monastery at night. Shadows with no source, cold winds that blew in sealed rooms, the sound of sandals brushing across stone floors where no one stood. Some began calling it the curse of the Cassino Abbey. It was said that the bombing had not just shattered stone and spirit, but had awakened something far older, something buried beneath centuries of sacred ground. And as the battle raged on, the line between the living and the dead began to blur. The horror of Monte Cassino wasn't just in the bodies lost or the blood spilled. It was in the feeling that this place, once a haven of peace, had become a prison for souls, and that the monastery, now shattered, had become something else entirely, a gateway. Whispers among the rubble. As night fell on the shattered remains of Monte Cassino, the battlefield did not rest. It murmured, it breathed, it remembered. The soldiers stationed near the ruins began reporting strange occurrences just days after the bombing. Men hardened by war were suddenly struck by an unshakable sense of dread. They said the rubble moved at night, not physically, but with sound, as if something was shifting beneath it. Radio operators were the first to notice the anomaly. On frequencies that should have been dead silent, whispers crept in, faint and indecipherable at first, but growing clearer with time. One Dutch corporal, embedded with a British reconnaissance unit, claimed to hear a voice repeating his name in perfect Dutch, but no one else heard it. Patrols through the area began to avoid the monastery ruins after dark. Too many strange reports, sudden cold spots even in summer warmth, flickering lanterns despite fresh batteries, the feeling of being watched. Soldiers described seeing fleeting figures in the corners of their vision, shapes that vanished when approached. One British officer documented in his journal that he followed what looked like a fellow soldier wandering near the broken cloisters. He called out, but got no answer. When he reached the cloister arch, the figure was gone. No tracks, no sound, only the faint scent of burning incense. An old priest from a nearby village came to bless the site weeks later, at the request of a frightened captain. But upon entering the grounds, the priest froze. "This place," he whispered, "is no longer holy." He left without performing a single prayer. Among Dutch troops stationed in the region, rumors began to grow. Some believed that the souls of the monks, the soldiers, even the civilians who died here were trapped, pulled into a kind of limbo by the violence and betrayal of the bombing. Others whispered of an older curse, a darkness buried beneath the abbey long before the first bomb fell. The most chilling account came from two Dutch engineers repairing communication lines near the abbey's edge. They worked late into the evening and claimed to hear chanting from within the ruins, Gregorian, rhythmic, but with a tone that felt wrong. One of them fled, trembling, swearing the voices had changed into screams. But the other? He stayed, and by morning, he was gone. The ghost of the Italian soldier. They say ghosts don't linger where they died, but where they were betrayed. At Monte Cassino, betrayal came from the skies. As the ruins settled and the war front shifted, the soldiers thought the horror would fade with time. But instead, a new figure emerged, one that haunted the minds of all who saw him. He appeared first to an Italian boy from the nearby village of Cassino. Climbing the mountain alone one morning to retrieve scrap metal, the boy froze at the sight of a man standing motionless atop the ruined steps of the monastery. He wore a weathered Italian military uniform, his coat shredded at the edges, a rifle slung across his back. The boy waved. The man didn't respond. Curious, but not afraid, the child approached. But with each step, the air grew colder, thicker, like walking in a fog without mist. When the boy finally reached the top, the soldier was gone. Only footprints remained in the ash, and a faint, boot-shaped impression on a stone where no one had stood. That was only the beginning. Within days, Allied soldiers began reporting sightings of the same figure. Always alone, always still, always standing on the edge of the ruins, overlooking the valley below. "He's not moving like a person," one Dutch soldier said. "He doesn't sway, doesn't blink. He just stares." The soldier never reacted to their presence. He never spoke. No one ever saw him walk. But somehow, he was always there, each sunset without fail. Silent, watchful, drenched in a golden haze as the dying light poured through broken clouds. One officer attempted to approach him, believing it might be a stranded partisan or deserter. He climbed the path quickly, called out in multiple languages, but when he reached the top, he found only an old, rusted helmet. The initials LC were carved inside. No footsteps, no trail. A strange pattern emerged. Those who saw the ghostly soldier began to suffer vivid dreams. Not nightmares, but memories that didn't belong to them. Flashes of chaos, fire, and the sound of cries echoing through stone corridors. A sense of guilt, of being trapped. Some whispered that he was the soul of an Italian conscript, killed by the bombing while protecting civilians. Others believed he had been left behind, forgotten in the collapse, betrayed by both allies and enemies alike. And now, condemned to return every evening to the place of his death, watching, waiting. For what? No one could say. But those who locked eyes with the ghost, if only for a second, reported the same thing. A deep, indescribable sorrow, as if a lifetime of grief had been poured into them all at once. And when they turned away, he was gone. The hidden crypt. The ruins of Monte Cassino held more than just the echoes of war. They held secrets buried far beneath the rubble, hidden for centuries until a careless step unearthed them. In the summer of 1944, as engineers and soldiers began clearing debris from the monastery's ruins, a strange collapse occurred near the central nave. What looked like a crack in the floor widened into a gaping hole. At first, they believed it to be just another bomb crater, but it wasn't. Below the rubble lay a narrow stairwell, ancient and untouched by modern boots. Not on any map, not listed in any monastery record. A British sapper team, joined by two Dutch Royal Engineers, was assigned to investigate. Armed with flashlights and rifles, they descended into the dark. The walls were carved stone, blackened with age, lined with symbols unfamiliar to any Christian tradition. The air was dry but heavy, thick with the scent of burnt incense, and something else, something metallic and sour. They reached a chamber beneath the abbey. It wasn't large, but it was wrong. Wrong in geometry, wrong in feeling. The torches flickered despite no wind. On the walls were faded frescoes, figures cloaked in robes, encircling a man with outstretched arms. But the man wasn't crucified. He was burning. One of the Dutch soldiers, Corporal Vandermeer, took photographs. None of them developed. Only black sheets with distorted streaks, as if the film had melted. At the center of the room stood an altar made not of marble or stone, but of dark, charred wood, bound with iron rings. Embedded in its surface was a relic, a blackened crucifix, its edges worn down, almost clawed at. Around it, Latin inscriptions twisted into something older, undecipherable. One soldier reached for it. The moment his fingers grazed the cross, he screamed and fell back. His skin blistered, as if burned, though no heat came from the relic. The rest of the team fled the chamber, dragging him out. He survived but never spoke again. The site was sealed. Quietly. No report filed. The commanding officer told his men to forget what they'd seen. But the story spread like smoke through the ranks. Some believed it wasn't a Christian crypt at all, but something far older, a pagan site buried and hidden by the Benedictines when they first built the abbey. A place not meant to be found. And by disturbing it, they had loosened something ancient. The soldier who touched the relic, he was shipped home in silence. 6 months later, he was found dead in his apartment in Rotterdam, surrounded by Latin phrases scrawled across the walls in his own blood. The cursed relic. Some objects are meant to be worshipped, others to be buried and forgotten. The black crucifix found beneath Monte Cassino was the latter. After the incident in the crypt, the crucifix, charred, heavy, unnaturally cold, was placed into a locked steel box and transferred to a temporary Allied command post for examination. Officially, it was just another artifact. Unofficially, it was a source of fear. No one wanted to touch it. The British commander in charge, Colonel Whitmore, ordered a small team, including a Dutch interpreter named Elias Dalen, to document the relic's markings. Elias was fluent in Latin and ancient script, but what he found on the crucifix made no sense. The language starts in Latin, he wrote in his notes, but ends in something much older. Etruscan, perhaps. A prayer, I think, or a warning. Within 48 hours of handling the object, Elias began to experience vivid hallucinations. He saw flames rising from the floor, heard screams echoing through empty rooms, and saw the shadow of a man hanging upside down in every reflective surface. He was not alone. The soldiers assigned to guard the artifact grew agitated. One slit his own palm and drew a circle on the floor, saying it would keep the watchers out. Another wandered into the woods at night and was found naked, whispering in perfect Latin, though he didn't speak the language. And then the dream started. Each night, members of the unit dreamed the same thing. Standing inside the ruined abbey, surrounded by corpses, the black crucifix glowing in their hands. But as they tried to drop it, it melted into their skin. They would wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, with the shape of the crucifix faintly imprinted on their palms. Medical officers dismissed it as shared trauma, but one Dutch private kept a journal. His last entry read, "It's not a dream, it's a summoning." Shortly after, he disappeared without a trace. A week later, Colonel Whitmore ordered the artifact destroyed. It was placed in a fuel drum and set ablaze, but the flames refused to catch. Even when soaked in gasoline and magnesium, the crucifix remained untouched. Blackened, yes, but not burned. In the end, it was sealed in a crate and buried deep in a military vault. Coordinates erased, files redacted, but even in the absence of its physical form, the crucifix's mark lingered. Those who touched it lived short, tragic lives. Accidents, suicides, madness. Some say the relic didn't just carry a curse. It chose its hosts, like a beacon drawing in the broken. the guilty, the lost. And once it found you, it never let go. The Screaming Valley. Long after the guns went silent, the valley beneath Monte Cassino refused to sleep. Something beneath the ruins still wept and screamed. As Allied forces pushed north and the war front moved on, the area around Cassino slowly returned to civilian hands. Farmers, shepherds, and villagers began to resettle the devastated land. But none dared to climb the mountain after dusk. Not anymore. They called it WWII, the Screaming Valley. At first, it was thought to be trauma, the aftershocks of war. But then came the accounts. Consistent, terrifying. Locals reported hearing agonized screams echoing down from the monastery ruins during the twilight hours. Long, distorted cries that seemed to carry on the wind. Sometimes they came with no wind at all. A young shepherd claimed to see a line of burning figures walking in silence across the lower slopes at night, like soldiers on patrol, their bodies alight, but leaving no smoke or smell. His father dismissed the tale. But days later, the boy's flock returned alone. The boy never did. An old woman, once a nurse during the war, described walking through the valley and suddenly hearing the bleeding cries of wounded soldiers, dozens of them. She turned and found herself standing in the middle of a ghostly battlefield, with spectral medics rushing by, their faces blurred and eyes empty. And then it vanished. All of it. Just grass and wind and silence. The people of Cassino began leaving offerings at the foot of the mountain. Candles, crosses, flowers. Not in reverence, but in fear, as if trying to appease something that now ruled the ruins. What made the fear worse was how it spread, not just through stories, but through behavior. Visitors from other parts of Italy reported overwhelming anxiety when approaching the monastery site. Some broke down in tears for no reason. Others fell into trances. One woman from Naples collapsed on the old mule path and began muttering in Latin, repeating a single word, closet est. It is sealed. Historians dismissed it. Psychologists blamed survivors' guilt. But a pattern emerged. Those most affected had either served in the war or were children of those who had. Some said it wasn't just a haunting. It was a resonance, a scar on reality itself. Monte Cassino had absorbed so much pain, so much betrayal and fire, that the land had changed. A living memory, a valley where time sometimes slipped, where screams weren't echoes, but replays. And every night, as the sun dipped behind the shattered walls of the abbey, the cries would return, piercing, endless, not just of the dead, but of those still trapped in the moment of dying. Vanishing soldiers. War takes lives, but something at Monte Cassino took more than that. It erased people. In early 1946, after the war officially ended, Allied military personnel returned to Monte Cassino to assess the ruins for historical preservation. Among them was a small unit of British engineers and Dutch technical advisors. Their task was simple: map the subterranean damage, clear potential unexploded ordnance, and catalog what remained. They were professionals, experienced, but none of them were prepared for what they would find. Or rather, what would find them. The unit set up a temporary camp near the monastery ruins. The first day passed without incident. They noted strange cold patches inside the abbey, faulty compass readings, and radios that emitted soft crackling despite no active signals. Strange, but not unheard of. It was on the second night that the first man disappeared. Private Anton Vries, a Dutch cartographer, had gone to relieve himself just a few meters beyond the campfire. He never returned. At first, they thought he'd gotten lost in the dark. Search teams with lanterns scoured the hillside. No body, no blood, just his footprints, clear as day, leading toward the archway of the ruined abbey and stopping dead. No return trail, no drag marks, just nothing. The next night, another soldier vanished, this time from inside his own tent. No sound, no struggle. He simply wasn't there come morning. In a panic, the remaining men attempted to radio for help, but all communications failed. Static, whispers. Some claimed they heard names in the signal, names of the missing men. Desperate, one officer climbed the slope to the abbey at dawn. He found their equipment scattered just beyond the collapsed cloisters. maps, journals, canteens, placed carefully in a circle. In the center lay an old Italian dog tag. It read, Luca Corsini, 1944, a name that did not match any of the missing soldiers. Frightened, the team broke camp and descended the mountain. But even after escape, the survivors were never the same. One Dutch survivor, Corporal Reindeval, was found years later in a psychiatric hospital in Utrecht. He refused to speak of the mission, except once. He said, "They're not dead. They were called, and they went willingly." When asked who called them, he replied, almost in a whisper, "The mountain remembers. It needs names." Official records of the 1946 expedition are sparse. Some documents were marked as missing. Others were sealed under military classification for decades. But among locals, the legend grew. Each decade, Monte Cassino must claim its own, a soul for every secret buried beneath its stones. And those who return to the abbey, they risk becoming a name that history forgets, because something older remembers. The Eternal Guard. Every fortress has a guardian. But Monte Cassino's was never appointed. He was bound. By death, by duty, by something much darker. For decades, stories persisted of a solitary, ghostly figure. The Italian soldier who stood silently at the crest of Monte Cassino as the sun set. Seen by tourists, locals, even modern soldiers. Always alone, always watching. He never approached, never responded. He simply remained, unmoving, unblinking, as if performing a silent vigil over the ruins. Folklorists gave him a name, Il Guardiano Eterno, the Eternal Guard. But in 1983, during an archaeological survey by an Italian historical society, something changed. A journal was discovered beneath the collapsed dormitory wing of the monastery. Inside, yellowed and half-burned, were pages belonging to a soldier named Luca Corsini, a name that had appeared before, carved into an unclaimed dog tag found decades earlier during the Vanished Patrol incident. Corsini was a conscript in the Italian army, stationed at the Abbey in early 1944. But his entries revealed no hatred for the Allies, nor loyalty to the fascists. Instead, he wrote of dreams, dark dreams, warning him not to abandon the monastery. One entry stood out, dated 2 nights before the bombing. The monks are gone, but something beneath remains. I feel it watching me. The others want to flee, but I cannot. I am bound here. I must stay. I must keep it in. He never escaped. There is no record of his body ever being found. Some believe Corsini was the only one who understood the truth, that the abbey built on older ruins was sealing something in. And when the bombs fell, the seal was broken. But Corsini remained. In body or spirit, no one knows. Since that time, every confirmed sighting of the ghostly soldier has occurred at sunset, when the shadows grow long across the ruins. Those who make eye contact describe the same sensation, a wave of sorrow, followed by a strange sense of calm, and then fear. Not fear of him, but of what he is holding back. One Polish tourist captured a photo in 2002. It showed a lone man in uniform standing atop the shattered stairs of the Abbey. But when she developed the image, the man had no face, just a blur of light and ash. Historians dismiss him as myth, but local guides often pause before entering the Abbey at dusk, tipping their caps to the empty air, out of respect or superstition, and perhaps because deep down they believe what some soldiers have whispered for years. He's not guarding us from the mountain, he's guarding the mountain from us. Modern encounters. Decades have passed, wars have ended, nations have rebuilt, but something at Monte Cassino remains, unseen, unforgotten, and very much awake. In the modern era, Monte Cassino has become a site of remembrance. Tourists from across Europe visit to pay respects, to explore the ruins, and to marvel at the reconstructed abbey. But even in peace, the echoes of war have not fully faded. Strange stories continue. Hikers speak of malfunctioning electronics, phones that drain from 100% to 0 in minutes, cameras that refuse to focus, GPS signals that spiral into nonsense. Some devices capture bursts of static, others something more unsettling, brief audio recordings of men shouting in languages no one nearby was speaking. A French tourist couple in 2017 claimed their digital camera captured multiple exposures in a single frame. One image of the ruins, overlaid with the faint silhouette of a burning soldier walking toward them. The image vanished from the SD card 2 days later. In 2019, a group of Dutch students documenting World War II memorials uploaded drone footage from the Abbey site. But when reviewing the film, they noticed a figure standing motionless near a wall that had been empty moments earlier. When they enhanced the image, his uniform appeared outdated, Italian World War II infantry. He was gone in the next frame. Locals still speak in hushed tones of the Valle Oscura, the dark valley. Certain places where visitors report headaches, nausea, or sudden feelings of dread. One German historian fainted after stepping into a particular corridor of the crypts, claiming later that she heard chanting and saw flashes of red behind her eyelids. But perhaps the most chilling story comes from a 12-year-old boy from Rotterdam who visited with his father. After walking the ruins, the boy began having vivid nightmares, seeing a man in a tattered uniform staring at him through shattered stone. Each dream ended the same. The man pointing toward the ground and whispering a word the boy didn't understand. His father, a linguist, finally recognized it. Aprire. Open it. No one had told the boy any history of the site. No one had spoken Italian on the trip. The dream stopped once they returned to the Netherlands. But the father said something strange. The boy would occasionally murmur Latin phrases in his sleep, despite never learning the language. The Abbey stands today, rebuilt, beautiful, a monument to resilience. But beneath its foundations, the past still breathes. Some believe the energy of Monte Cassino is residual, a haunting by memory. Others believe it is active, alive. And if the dreams, the whispers, and the disappearing figures are to be believed, then the mountain is not finished with us yet. Epilogue, trapped forever. Some places are remembered for what happened there. Others remember you. Monte Cassino is more than a battlefield, more than a monastery, more than ruins or relics or remembrance. It is a wound, a place where time collapsed under the weight of betrayal, fire, and fear. A mountain that has seen gods worshipped, monks praying, soldiers dying, and something far older than all of them stirring beneath the stones. The monks once believed they were building on sacred ground. But what if they were building on something forgotten? Not to celebrate it, but to contain it. And when the bombs fell, what was unleashed? The ghosts that walk the rubble aren't just fragments of war. They are echoes of a place that refuses to let go. The soldier who watches from the ridge. The screams that ride the wind. The relic that burns but cannot be destroyed. They all point to one truth. Some who died at Monte Cassino never truly left. They remain trapped, not just by memory, but by duty. Bound to a battlefield where no victory was ever truly won. Bound by something they cannot escape. And maybe, just maybe, they're not trying to escape at all. Maybe they're warning us. Because some stories never end. Some battles never sleep. And some mountains never forget. So if you ever visit Monte Cassino, stand still for a moment. Listen. If the wind grows quiet, if the air feels cold, you may not be alone. You may be standing on the threshold of something far greater than history. Something buried, something waiting, and watching. Thank you for joining us on this chilling journey through the cursed lands of Monte Cassino. We hope you felt the weight of history and the shadows that still linger today. If this story intrigued you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're hungry for more untold war stories, paranormal mysteries, and the legends that survive long after the guns fall silent, make sure you hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. We'll be back soon with more tales that'll send chills down your spine. Until then, keep the lights on and never stop wondering what's lurking in the shadows.